Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how I made this stainless steel ring with a blue inlay in my apartment kitchen just using a Dremel. I bought all of the materials from a website called ringsupplies.com, and I'll put that link in the description in case you want to do a similar project. I ended up buying 3 ring blanks just in case I made any mistakes, and this was definitely a good idea. I also bought this blue goldstone material, a darker black opal, a lighter blue opal, and then this Afghanistan lapis material. In addition, I also got 2 powders. I got this blue glow powder and then this iridescent blue pigment powder. I'm going to try and highlight all of my mistakes that I made as I move through the video, so I'll be showing the different ring blanks in different parts of the video. I 3D printed a support block for my Dremel to hold it similar to a lathe, but you can probably just use a block of wood and jerry-rig it. I also 3D printed this mandrel to hold the ring using chamfered blocks. This worked really well, other than not allowing me to hit the corners and sides of the ring while it's mounted on the Dremel, so I had to do those separately. It would have been ideal to have a proper ring mandrel, but they wouldn't fit on the Dremel that I have. I'm thinking about 3D printing one, but that's probably going to be for a future project. I started off by mixing all of the materials in a cap to pour into a folded business card to direct the material into the channel. But I actually found that I got a better result by putting each material individually into the ring so that I had more control over the consistency. When I poured all of the materials at once, the larger stones fell in first and landed in one area on the ring. By specifically placing each stone and targeting where I put the powdered materials, I was able to have a little more control over the distribution, and then I could fill in the gaps where it was necessary. You can see that after I mix these materials, what I'm going to do is put a bead of super glue around the inlay of the ring, and then pour my materials into it using this card. All of the big stones fall in first, and then all of the little pieces are left in the card. I got around this by trying to pour it a little bit at a time, but ultimately what I do is add another bead of super glue onto the ring to hold everything in place, and then continue pouring those smaller pieces to fill in the gaps where necessary. I kept doing this process until the whole inlay was domed higher than the metal side channels, so that when I sanded it down flush, everything would be filled in correctly. I would definitely recommend using an accelerator spray on the super glue, which I didn't have at the time because it was tending to drip before it dried, and it took some material with it. I would also say to definitely let the glue dry for at least a day so you don't risk messing up the ring. My first thought to sand it down was to use this file on the material to hit the protruding parts, but I found that this was moving way too slowly. I tried spinning the ring on a Dremel and then using the file, but this just dulled the crap out of my file, so I would definitely not recommend that either. The best method that I found by far to remove the excess material was to take a sanding drum on the Dremel while holding the ring and then just take down the outside of the ring. I sanded it down until the inlay was flush with the metal surface, and during this whole process I probably went through about 2 sanding drums, so it's definitely best to have some extras on hand. Once I had the surface mostly flush, I remounted the ring on the Dremel and then took some very low grit sandpaper to the outer surface of the ring to smooth everything out. This step was definitely crucial because any bits that are left protruding need to be taken down before I can move on to this next step. You can see that there are some areas where the stones came out or the glue didn't fill the gaps perfectly, so what I had to do is spot treat those holes with more super glue to make sure that I have a uniform surface on the ring. I found that for the larger gaps, it was actually better to pour some fine stone powder into the hole before adding the glue, so the glue didn't have as much area to fill and you weren't left with a clear pocket. I had to repeat this process a couple of times because new areas kept coming up as I took down the outer surface of the ring. I'm guessing most likely it's from loose stones, but it could also have just been from not filling perfectly. Once the glue was dry, I hit the glue spots with some rough sandpaper to get the outer surface back to flush, before mounting the ring on the Dremel and then hitting it with the sandpaper again. I found that sanding by hand removed the majority of the excess material, while putting it back on the Dremel smoothed everything out. Once I had the surface free of any raised areas, I was able to move on to wet sanding. I poured some water underneath the ring and slowly worked my way from 600 grit sandpaper all the way up to 3000 grit. It's important during this step to take your time with each grit to get all of the imperfections out from the previous grit so that you're left with a smooth surface. I'm going to skip what would be a very long sanding montage, and so after that, my ring was complete. I probably could continue by using a buffing bit on the Dremel, but from what you can see here, I'm satisfied with the finish that I was able to get on the ring. The ring looks crazy in sunlight because of all the opal reflecting the light, and the glow powder adds a cool effect in UV light. This was actually a surprisingly easy project that I'd highly recommend, since it doesn't require a lot of materials, and I was able to do this entire project in my kitchen in an apartment. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you liked the ring, and I hope you enjoyed.